here is here for the first time this year, or at all. First time this year. Awesome. Okay. So lots of new faces and some familiar ones, which is awesome. So my name is Ana, and this is my colleague Alim. So I work in the Clio sales department. This is also my first Clio conference. And essentially what I do is I actually reach out to law firms who may or may not already be familiar with Clio and see if there's a way that we can help them better run their business. What's really exciting about my job is I actually get to see the before and after of how much of a positive impact we've been able to make on your day-to-day. As I mentioned, I'm here with Alim.
So my name's Alim. I'm a product manager at Clio. For those of you who don't know what a product manager is, I'm kind of like an engineer that doesn't do any more engineering. So when you request a feature or want to talk to someone about the things you like or dislike in Clio, it's my job to interact and listen to that and then work with our teams of engineers to get that kind of stuff built for you. So I'm also excited to be here to talk about some of the features we built and to hear your feedback throughout the conference as well.
Awesome. So what can you guys expect to learn over the next hour? Well, we're going to start off with what is automation, and specifically, what's office automation? Next, why automate? So what is the real value of having these automation pieces in place apart from just saving some time in the day? Next, we're going to dive into a 3-stage process that begins with planning your automation strategy, then dive into some Clio-specific tips and workflows. So for those of you who are Clio power users or have been using Clio for a long time, some of this might come off as a refresher. However, we're hoping that you walk away with at least one new feature that you can use in your day-to-day. And then finally, stage 3 is going to be firm and staff-wide implementation tips. So how can you get everyone on board with these new updates or new workflows? And then finally, we're going to cap it off with a quick summary of everything that we've discussed and answer any questions that you might have. So next up, I'm going to pass it back to Alim, and he's going to take us off with what is automation.
Thanks, Anna. So before we get into some of the more specific Clio tips, I think it's important just that we go through a quick definition to make sure that we have a common foundation for the things we're going to be talking about later. So I like to define automation as streamlining, centralizing, or outsourcing some or all of your law firm's back office functions. And I think there's 3 key parts of this that we're going to break down. So number 1, we said streamlining. Streamlining means making your existing processes more efficient, so taking the things that you already do and figuring out how we're going to reconfigure them to better serve you. Centralizing being taking scattered or non-formal work and adding new processes to potentially remove some of the inefficiencies that exist. And then finally, outsourcing being the considering of removal or the considering of displacing of some of the non-essential processes from the firm entirely. So 3 things: adding potentially new processes, reconfiguring the ones that exist, and considering where we're going to remove things in order to get to the automation goals that you're looking for. And then I think there's a few key clarifications that I want to make about automation as well. So I think it's important to note that technology is a good tool for automation, but it's not the only option. A lot of the things that we're going to talk about today are technology tools in Clio, but it's not necessarily a necessity that you look only at technology tools. There's a lot of things that you can do just from thinking about how you change your existing processes with the way that they already run that can help a lot as well. And then 2, I think a lot of people hear the word automation and think it's about eliminating jobs. And I want to clarify that automation is not necessarily about eliminating jobs. There can be this fear, but I think the best firms recognize that especially the back office administrative staff are really the connective tissue keeping a lot of the firm running. And good automation practices allow people in those roles to either spend their time on the things that are the best use of their time or on the things that they enjoy most. So it's not about removing jobs, it's about leveraging people's capabilities to work on the highest impact or the most enjoyable things. So the second part of the background I want to get into is to just talk about why automate. And I know that might sound like kind of a silly thing to a room full of people that chose to hear about automation strategies, but just humor me and let's go through a little bit of a background, making sure that we're on the same page about the benefits that you might expect to see. So a non-automated back office might expect to see things like people dreading some of the repetitive tasks that are being done over and over. You might expect people working long hours because of the amount of tasks that pile up. You might expect to see people being annoyed at staff feeling like bottlenecks or people feeling like they are a bottleneck to others. You might expect to see slow or forgetful client communication, either because you're not sure when it's the appropriate time, or you're too busy to actually send out those updates to your clients. And you might expect to see things like cash flow difficulties because your billing process is taking longer than it needs to, you're not reminding your clients to pay their bills, and other things that can result in financial missteps. So and the last point here is data input errors that I wanted to talk about. So data input errors being the inability to make sure that consistent information is coming through, which may result in incorrect reporting later on, or make its way into client communications and other things that reflect poorly on the firm. So the opposite to that would be the automated back office. And this is what we're going to strive for today. So one, hopefully you can expect to see happier clients. Those clients are getting more communication. They're getting it more often. It's more relevant to the needs of what they're looking for. You can expect happier staff. They're able to concentrate their time on the things that they enjoy and are best able to do. You can expect to see cleaner desks and shelves, less clutter, less paper, less things kicking around. You can expect to see more money in the bank. You can expect to see those bills go out faster. You can expect to see clients paying their bills faster. And with all of that, you're probably telling me, okay, this sounds great, but where do we go from here? You're preaching to the choir, how do I get started? And the answer to that is, before jumping into any tools, just a quick primer on planning your automation strategy. So stage one we're going to cover here is some quick tips on how to do that. I like to think of this quote not only from the perspective of automation, but in a lot of the things I do in my day-to-day job. And someone once said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. And the spirit of this is really to make sure that you're spending your limited time on the things that will have the most impact. So when we talk about automation, there's a couple ways that we can make sure that we're spending our time on the things that will have the most impact. And I think process mapping is a really important tool in doing that. So I'll just go over a few quick bullet points here that talk about how you can map that process out. So for your firm, if you take some of the common workflows that you have or know, and you break them down into their individual parts, you can do things like look at who are the people involved, what are some of the tasks that need to be done, what are the decisions that I'll make as part of that workflow, what are the outcomes that will come from those decisions, what is the timing that's involved in doing that, and then you can assess the size of the opportunity. How big an impact can you actually have? So you can look at things like what's taking the most time out of all of those, where are the consequences high for my firm if we were to make a mistake? And then finally, we can look for traits that are appropriate for automation. And specifically, we ask ourselves, where is there clear business logic or rules on how I can approach the steps of this workflow? And those are all good characteristics to be able to say automation might be an appropriate strategy to help us here. All right, so I'm going to turn it back to Ana now, and we're going to get into some of the specific tools in Clio that will tell us how to inform our automation strategy moving forward.
Cool. Thanks, Lim, for that overview. So for this portion of the presentation, we actually broke it down into what would be the matter journey or the life cycle of a matter. So we're going to go through some specific workflows particular to client intake, some casework workflows, and then everybody's favorite part, billing and payments. Throughout this presentation, we're also going to be letting you know about any integrations that are going to be really helpful in supercharging that automation. So meet Susan. Susan is our office administrator, much like many of you in this room. Any chance there's an actual Susan office administrator in this room? Oh my goodness, I love solid 10 people raise their hand. Awesome. So Susan supports the work of about 10 attorneys and 4 other support staff. And in preparing for this presentation, we actually reached out to folks like Susan and yourself. And we spoke with our support team, so the people that you speak with every time you have a question about Clio. And we did this in order to get a better understanding of where are your biggest roadblocks or where you may be spending too much of your time. So in order to kind of give you that best value over the next 45 minutes or so, we're actually going to dive into some of those specific workflows and show you ways in which you can automate them, or at the very least, how you can make them more efficient. So diving back into the matter journey, we're going to kick it off with client intake. So specifically what we're looking for here is how are you collecting and organizing your data, or how are you delegating tasks and keeping the whole firm organized? So if you're anything like Susan, maybe this picture looks a little bit familiar to you. So you find that entering in those individual custom fields often just takes too long. I see some nods in the room. So something like custom field sets, if you haven't used them before, are going to be really helpful because they offer better customization and better organization of data by allowing you to capture a set of customized data specific to a client or matter. This can also be specific to things like practice areas or specific workflows. It also helps eliminate that human error risk of maybe forgetting some important information that you need to collect every time you're opening a new matter. It also just makes it a lot easier to kind of keep your data organized and find it a lot easier. And finally, you can also filter and report based on it, so it's going to allow you to navigate through Clio a lot faster in the future. To show you what something like this looks like, this is an example of all of the individual custom field sets that Susan has set up. So in order to create a field set, you would select the custom fields that you want to create, and then create them into a field set based on those practice areas or maybe other data categories, like administrative. So in order to add them, it'd be super simple. You can do so when creating or editing a matter and just navigating to the custom fields area here. You can actually select as many as you like. So in this case, we're going to add in some administrative data. You can go ahead and add that all in within just a few clicks. You know all of the information that you need when creating this new data, or new matter, sorry. And then when you navigate back to the matter dashboard, you're going to see all of your custom fields right here. Or if you click on the custom fields tab up at the top, it's going to be organized by the data category here. So as an example, you can see both administrative and criminal litigation. So now Susan looks a little bit more like this. She can save some time, reduce that human error risk, and just navigate through Clio a lot faster in the future. So next up, she finds that there's some tasks or some cases that are slipping through the cracks, whether it's something that she's been tasked with or other firm members have been tasked with. It often falls just back on her to make sure everybody is organized. So task list is really great because it helps to improve productivity by auto-populating a set of organized to-do lists based on specific criteria. So this criteria can be things like practice areas or workflows like client intake, closing out a matter, whatever kind of makes most sense for your law firm. It also generates automated reminders, therefore reducing or eliminating the amount of time it takes for you to chase around some of your colleagues who might be forgetting some things. So there's going to be two different ways that you can assign a task list. The first is going to be through this list tab under the tasks tab. And here you're going to be able to see all of the task lists that you've created. So as an example here, you can see we have family law matter open, but we also have family law matter close. So you can dive down really specific. In order to add it, you just navigate over to the appropriate task list that you want to assign. And now, as an example, you can see all of the tasks that need completing anytime I open a new family law matter. So now when setting up or editing that task list template, you're going to be able to customize a few things. So you can add in extra reminders or cascading tasks. And then finally, you're going to be able to assign those tasks to the specific firm member, and also you're always going to need to assign it to a matter so you know where it's going. The second way that you can add in a task list is through the initial matter creation under this task automation tab. Simply just navigate over to the appropriate task list. And now, either way that you've added them in, you're going to be able to find all of your tasks under this tab right here, or you're going to also be able to view them under your calendar, so whatever makes most sense for your firm. So now Susan is pretty happy because she knows she can auto-populate completed task list there, save time and reduce kind of the risk of that human error. So next up, all of your data's in, you're organized, and you're ready to get started. However, the law firm has let you know that they can't commence work until there's been funds in trust. So getting the funds in trust isn't necessarily the most time-consuming thing, but maybe monitoring the level of that trust account is. So it can be a lot of manual work and a lot of repetitive work just going back and forth. So the Evergreen Management Tool is a great system because what it is an automated system to help you track, maintain, and replenish trust accounts. And it also reduces or eliminates the time manually spent monitoring that trust account, making sure it's at that balance that you want it to. And then what it does is it also automates notifications if and when it ever dips below that predetermined level that you set up. Now, in order to do so, it's super simple. You can do so in a new matter or really at any point of the matter life cycle. So just navigate down to the trust balance notification area. You're going to want to check off notify firm users, and then choose the firm member that you want to be notified. And then make sure you add in the dollar amount that you always want this trust fund balance to be at. So now the information is going to be readily available for you at a glance when you look on the Matter dashboard. The green indicator is going to allow you to see that it's at a healthy balance. And then alternatively, it's going to be highlighted in red to notify you that it's dipped below that balance, making it super easy for you to see and hit new request and send that out to the client. The appropriate firm member is also going to receive an email saying, hey, this balance has dipped below and we need to send out a new trust request. So once again, Susan is pretty happy because she knows she can save a lot of time and kind of eliminate that tedious work going back and forth. So now you've got all your information in, you got some money in the bank, and you are ready to get on with the casework. But how effectively are you communicating with your clients, or how are you collaborating with the rest of the firm? So for this portion, I'm going to pass it back to Alim, and he's going to take us through some of the most efficient or automated workflows for casework.
Thanks, Anna. All right, so the first problem that we heard when talking to our administrators when it comes to casework was that adding important court dates to the calendar is incredibly time consuming. In fact, we were just talking about this a few moments before the presentation started here. And luckily, there's a feature in Clio that helps to automate this tremendously. That feature is called Court Rules and is available in Clio's Elite package. And it's powered by a service called Calendar Rules, who's also here today if you get a chance to speak to them over in the other hall. But Court Rules basically allows you to create events based on your specific jurisdiction's court rules and set up those deadlines in a programmatic way. And I'll show you an example in a moment here, but the idea is this is going to make it way easier for you to make sure that the appropriate deadlines and rules are set on your calendar so that you never have to worry about missing another important one. So we can take a look at an example of adding a court rule here. So under your settings tab, court rules exist as a setting, and you can set them up here by saying, I want to configure a name. I'm going to configure potentially the matter it's appropriate for. I'm going to configure the jurisdiction of my court. I'm going to set up a trigger name and then a date at which point all of the preceding calendar events will be calculated based on. So if we go ahead and set that up, we can now see that it's generated for my jurisdiction all of the appropriate court rules. And we can go through selecting or deselecting the ones that are actually appropriate to the matter that we have at hand. And when we go to our next option here and say, I want to put it on this person's calendar and I want these particular people in the firm to be attendees, we can set up reminders, configure that, and now we can see when we actually go to that matter that we have all of those court rules all on this particular matter and all on the appropriate calendar as well for Paul, the attendee that we've configured. In addition, when we go over to our calendars, we can see there's also a calendar for Paul Brown's court dates here. So at a glance, you can quickly get a view, not only of having configured, but also viewing what the appropriate dates are for that matter. So hopefully this is now at a point where our Susan administrator is saying the court rules has saved me a lot of time by automatically generating those dates and those deadlines based on the information I need for my specific jurisdiction and firm members. And I will ask that we'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions. So if anyone has any questions as we're talking about this, we'll definitely make sure we get to those at the end. So just save those, please. So the next problem I want to talk about is one that I'm really excited about. So I think it's a very common worry that clients are spending so much time on the phone just asking for updates on where their cases are at. So we have a quote here from Jordan Couch. Jordan's with Palace Law over in Tacoma, Washington. And on our Clio Matters podcast, one thing that he was talking about doing for their firm was setting up a system. They have a matter system that often involves checks being picked up for clients, and clients often asking, when is my check ready for pickup? So they said every time a check is ready for them in the office, the client automatically gets a notification via a text on their phone, and that caused client communication calls to go down quite a bit. So I'll show you how we can do that with a feature integration called Zapier, if you've heard of that. Zapier is a third-party service that integrates with Clio, and it allows you to set up logic rules so that you can take actions of things that either happen in Clio and then trigger another piece of software to do something, or in another piece of software, if something happens, trigger an action to then correspond in Clio. And there are thousands of other tools and services. So this might be things like sending emails or text messages. It might be things like adding or modifying entries in your favorite cloud spreadsheet. It might be adding or moving documents in your cloud storage system. And it might be pretty much anything you can dream up with the thousands of integrations that exist. So coming back to that example that Jordan was talking about, we'll show you how to configure something like that in Zapier. So what we're looking at here is a screen within the Zapier software. And we set up our rules to say when a task is updated in Clio, if a certain action happens, and we'll get through the details in a moment, then I want to find the matter in the person and I want to send them an email with that notification that their check is ready to be picked up. So we choose the appropriate app here, Clio. We say when a task is updated that I want to continue if I can find a task that said if the check has arrived and if that text now says that task is complete. And when that happens, I'm going to find the appropriate matter, and then find that person's contact information, and then finally configure that email at the end here. And that email could look something like this. Apologies if the text is a little small here, but it says, this notice is to inform you that a check has arrived at Clio Cloud Law. Please pick it up at our front desk, and even includes things like the first name of that client already automatically pulled in. And I'll show you an example here. So when we're in our tasks, we've set up our task here that says if check arrived, and we're going to mark that as complete. And when that happens, Zapier is going to trigger this email to be sent to that client that automatically tells them, hey, you have that check, come pick it up at our office. So again, I think that this is a really, really important, powerful tool in being able to set up some of these workflows, and specifically now for this one, hopefully Susan is saying, hey, my clients have stopped calling me for status updates, and I save a ton of time that I used to spend in my email. All right, I'm gonna pass it back to Ana now, and she's gonna tell us a little bit more about some case workflows.
Thanks, Lim. So next up, we're going to talk a little bit about document management. So uploading individual documents in bulk in Clio can be a little bit time consuming, and then also uploading them or downloading them to edit them just to upload them back into Clio can also be pretty tedious. So in this case, Susan definitely wants to continue taking advantage of Clio's unlimited document storage, but once again, having to upload individual files can take too long. So Clio offers two different ways in which you can actually bulk upload into your appropriate folder. So one is just a simple drag and drop from a desktop on your computer folder. And then the second is an integration called ScanSnap. So this is if you ever get a stack of physical papers, you can actually scan them directly into the appropriate Clio folder, so saving you a ton of tedious time in between. The second is Clio Launcher. So what Clio Launcher allows you to do is actually edit within Clio without ever actually having to leave the software. Essentially, again, just saving you that tedious work of uploading, downloading, editing, uploading. So in this example, Susan has a number of documents to add, but once again, uploading them individually would just take too long. So in this case, she can go ahead and just select the documents that she wants to upload, and then drag and drop them into the appropriate folder here. They're going to be added into a batch upload process, and they're going to be uploaded all at once. So now when Susan needs to edit one of the documents that she just uploaded, she can also do that in Clio super easily. Simply just click on this blue arrow button next to the appropriate document that you want to edit. And now it's going to open up in Word, ready to be edited. You can go ahead and make your changes or your edits. Once you're done, all you have to do is click Save, and it's going to save right into Clio. When you navigate back to the document here on the right-hand side, you're going to see the different versions of that document. What's also really cool is you're going to be able to see who did that edit and at what time, and then any previous versions are also going to be available to you to download or edit as required. So now Susan knows that she can save time by bulk uploading documents into Clio, whether they're on a computer folder or whether they're in physical paper form. But what about templated documents? Anyone in this room know the pain of having to copy and paste into pages and pages of a templated document? Yeah, I'm hearing some mm-hs. So Clio's document automation tool has been a game changer for a lot of the law firms that we work with, because what it essentially does is it lets you create your most used legal documents within a matter of seconds. Essentially, what it does is it auto-populates matter or client data into the template that you've created. And you can take something like this one step further by integrating with something like DocuSign, so you can actually get all of your most important paperwork signed even faster. So as an example here, these are all of the created templates in Susan's folder. So what's really neat about this is you just create them once, so it might be a little bit work up front, but then you can use them over and over again, saving you what could be minutes or literally hours of time. In order to create a template, all you have to do is navigate over to Clio's merge fields under the settings tab down there. And all of this information here is going to be available to you. So this is all of Clio's matter and client information, but it's also going to include all of those custom fields that we talked about initially. And so what you want to do is copy any of the information that you want, and then you can drag it or paste it into the template that you want to create. Now, to actually generate an auto-populated document from this template, simply just click on the new and then document from template, and it's going to ask you which template you want to use. And now when the document is generated, it's actually going to pull all of these merge fields from Clio and then populate them back into your document. So this is going to take a matter of 3 or 4 clicks tops, saving you a ton of time depending on how big your templated work can be. So here, Susan knows that she can generate these desired documents within just a matter of clicks or seconds. So next up, even though it's a pretty small task, writing out the same thing over and over again can surprisingly take up a lot of time. So Clio's text snippets is a bit of a hidden gem in the sense that some people might not be aware of it, but essentially what it does is it eliminates the need to endlessly type out the same thing over and over again by auto-populating full text based on predetermined abbreviations. So it works very similar to something like an iPhone autocomplete. What's cool about it is each member of the firm can actually customize these to what works best for them. It's also available in almost all corners of Clio. Clio is going to come with its own set of text snippets, but once again, each individual at the firm can go in and add any, or they can edit any of the existing ones to make more sense for them. So here's a great example of what a text snippet should look like. You can see that it's just a string of letters that probably won't end up in a word, making it really easy to kind of confuse something. So kind of jumble up some of the words there. One of the most kind of useful ways of using text snippets is within a time entry or an expense entry. So something that you're doing often, many times in a day. So here, oops. All right. So there she populated phone call with client, but can anyone guess what HIYB might stand for? Okay, fair enough. So text snippets doesn't just have to be for simple phrases. You can actually auto-populate something like a paragraph. So this is really helpful in something like sharing out bills, because not only does it streamline some of the communication within the firm, but it can help streamline some of the communication that you have with your clients. If you're typing this out 30, 20, 100 times at the end of the month, it can add up.
If it's too small to read too, that was "here is your bill."
Oh, was it too small? I apologize for the people in the back of the room. Yes, it was "here is your bill." So now Susan's pretty happy because she can use text shortcuts to save her some time at the end of each week or at the end of each month. So finally, all the casework has been finished and you are ready to go ahead and bill the client. However, maybe you are spending too much time chasing time or expense entries, bill approvals, or maybe you are trying to collect payment from customers who aren't picking up the phone. So for this portion of the presentation, I'm going to pass it back to Alim, and he's going to take us through some of the most efficient workflows for billing and payments.
Thank you, Anna. All right, let's see if this resonates. Susan said, we feel we aren't always capturing all of our billable work. I have to chase timekeepers to get their monthly hours in. I hear a few pieces of laughter, so I'm going to assume that some people have the same pain as Susan does. And one of the features that I really like is a little bit more on the timekeeper side of things, but involves passive timekeeping. So if this is a feature you haven't heard about, I'll explain the details of it. And it's through third-party integrations with Clio. So two that come to mind, Chrometa, and you may have heard of Faster Time or Faster Law before, are examples of third-party pieces of software that help to passively keep track of time. And I'll explain what that is in a moment here. So I'll show you a screenshot here. This is of that software Chrometa. And what we see here is a listing of the time that has been spent in the applications on a timekeeper's computer. So it's possible that instead of them bulk trying to figure out at the end of the month what were all those details and people chasing them to then put them on paper and get them inputted, that timekeepers can be presented with a list of all the places that they spent time on their computer and then just go through and categorize, and hopefully even on a daily basis, what that time was actually spent towards, so that they can get ahead and they can feel up to date, so that you don't have to be chasing them down at the end of the month or end of the week or end of the quarter or whenever it is to actually get that time in. So I think this is a really cool feature. And when they do this within a piece of software like Chrometa, they're then able to sync it directly into Clio. So you can see here that one of our entries that was entered in Chrometa, 30 minutes dedicated to letter writing, has now made its way directly into Clio and is ready to start part of the billing process. So we see, and people like Susan have said, that their firm actually tracks up to 30% more time than they used to when they use something like passive timekeeping, and their attorneys feel less burdened with having to keep their hours up to date, and hopefully you're not having to hound them or chase them down as much as you would have been prior to this. Another billing pain is just the time spent in preparing and recording payments that come for each bill. So if you're not familiar with this feature, bulk actions saves a ton of time when it comes to generating your bills. I'm sure many of you are using this, but if you're not, this is going to absolutely change the way that you bill if you're responsible for it. So bulk actions allow you to do things like bulk bill all of your billable clients at once. You can bulk apply trust balances at once, and when I say at once, I mean in almost single clicks. And then you can review and approve all of those bills in bulk if that's part of your process. So we'll take a look at that workflow and how it looks. Here we're on our Bills tab, and we're looking at all of our billable clients that potentially have activities ready to go for them. So we're going to go ahead and click the Generate button at the top there, and we'll be taken over to the creation of those bills. Now, those are all sitting in a draft state here, and you can go ahead and see all of the filters that you need to drill down to the particular bills that you need to then maybe get approval for. So let's go ahead and choose some filters here. And now on the on the left-hand side, we'll bulk select all of those bills as ready to go. So up at the top here, once those have all been bulk selected, we're going to see what actions we have available for us. So looking through that menu, we see we can do things like bulk approve them, bulk approve and apply trust to them, to share them, and a few others. So we're going to go ahead and approve these bills. And then it's going to, approve and apply trust to these bills. And it's going to ask us what's the destination account that we want to do. And with a single click here, we're going to go ahead and make sure that all of that happens. If you didn't do that, you can also approve them and then apply trust separately. So here we're going to go ahead and apply trust, assuming that they were just approved. And again, we can do that up in the left-hand side in bulk as well with all of those selected. So finally, I'll go back here and show at the top there, we can also share. So we're going to share those bills in bulk as well once they're ready to go. And we've bulk selected them. And we have this opportunity to choose a message that we want to send, choose a mechanism that we want to share them with, and go ahead and share those all at once. So with a few clicks now, potentially something that would have taken a few days if you weren't using these bulk actions is now taking a few hours or even less. So I'm a big fan of some of those features. The next workflow that Susan might be encountering is manually having to filter or find through reports all of the overdue client balances to ask clients to continue to pay their bills. And one feature that came out a couple months ago is outstanding balances that we know a lot of customers have been very excited about. Outstanding balances allows you to see at a glance all clients and the amount of the outstanding balance that they owe, regardless of whether or not they have an active bill during their current billing cycle. You can send out reminders as well of those outstanding balances, and you can receive payments directly through Clio Payments. So we'll take a look here at what that looks like. Again, we're in the bill section of the product, and now we're over on the outstanding balances tab at the top here. And I'll show you the sections here. So we can see the clients that have outstanding balances. We can see the last date that we shared a bill with them. We can see the newest bill's due date and whether it's overdue or not. We can see when the last payment was made to their outstanding balance. And then finally, we can see what that balance is itself. So we can go ahead and bulk select all of those outstanding balances as well, or any number that we want to, and we can go ahead and use the share button at the top there. And once we click that, again, we have an opportunity to add a message and share that balance out with all clients. And I'll show you what that looks like to a client. So they'll get an email here that details all of their outstanding invoices, all of the balances on those invoices, the total amount that's due, and then the ability, if you have Clio Payments, to even pay directly with their credit card online. So I'm hoping, again, that if you're thinking about this as a potential feature for you, you're going to say it's easier now to collect on overdue bills, and you can expect to see your collection rate go up from that. So the last feature here involves a lot of time being spent toward chasing clients to actually get paid. And I think I'm going to turn this back to Anna, who's going to tell us a little bit more about payment plans.
Awesome. So payment plans is a really great way of getting your firm paid faster by setting up automated scheduled reoccurring payments until that client's bill is paid off. So based on our 2018 legal trends report, the main reason that clients don't pay their bill up front is because they simply just can't afford that large lump sum. So being able to break it down into smaller or more manageable payments not only gets you paid up to 39% faster, but also improves the firm's cash flow. Not to mention, it saves you a ton of time from having to chase these clients around, making sure you're getting paid, or even worse, trying to drag them into the office if they want to pay by credit card. So in order to set up payment plans, it's super easy. If you have a boutique or elite level subscription, you want to activate your Clio Payments. And then in order to create a new payment plan, simply click on the Create Payment Plan there in the corner. And in this case, Richard has agreed to pay Susan $200 every 2 weeks. Now, the frequency of payments can be customized to your firm, so they can happen weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. And what's important to note is these payments will continue until the client's invoice is paid in full, even if there is a new bill generated in between that time. Clio is always going to ask you to confirm the details, and then it's going to go ahead and create that payment plan for you. And under your payment plans tab, you're going to be able to see all of the payment plans you've created, and then you're going to be able to edit and stop them as required. Next up, anytime a payment does go through, both the client and the firm is going to get an email notification letting you know that payment has happened. So now, not only is Susan pretty happy that she can eliminate all that manual work, but the firm's pretty happy because they're getting paid faster and they can improve their cash flow. That brings us to the last stop of the Clio-specific tips and workflows. However, Alim's going to be able to take us through some of the advanced automation tips that you can go through.
Thanks, Anna. So as I mentioned, in a former life, I was an engineer, so I'd be remiss not to talk about some of the technical things we can do if you're saying, hey, I've heard all this stuff, that's great, I know about all these features, I need more. So if you're not aware, Clio provides a API. API stands for Application Programming Interface, and that's how software developers interact with the data that's in Clio to both get data from there and put data into Clio. So it's possible that you might consider, if you're at this stage of needing more, actually working with a legal software developer or working with a consultant to try and build custom applications for yourself, and it's possible through this API. So you can actually have a mechanism to let your imagination run wild. And we've seen examples of people do things like build custom billing dashboards where they have very specific needs or things that they want to see on there. And pretty much anything else that you can dream of with the data that's in Clio, a software developer can help you build your custom applications on as well. So for those of you who are a little bit more technical, that's an option to go. But you can also work with some of these coaches or specialized consultants that exist in the legal industry. Clio has our Clio Certified Consultants program where consultants can help figure out how to get some of these things built for you or figure out how to improve some of these processes for you if you're not sure where to start. And that's a great option as well. All right, so we've gone through the section of talking about all of the tools that are available to you, and we'll just wrap up quickly here talking about the third and final stage of implementation. So I think it's really important as someone in the firm who might institute some of these changes to consider how you're actually going to go about that process, especially if it's going to affect the workflow of others. So one of the things, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but if you need to do things that affect others, getting firm buy-in, showing people the benefits as to what they care about in the firm is a great way to make sure that your plans of change actually succeed. And you can do that by things like looking at the ROI or helping to help people think about what is the ROI that you expect to see from changing some of these processes or using these tools. What's the time saved that people can expect to see within the firm? What's the improved caseload? And all kinds of other metrics that might actually be informative for others and help them get behind that change that you want to implement. I think we all know that without consultation, that it can kind of be a recipe for disaster, especially when we know the software that we like changes, then we have to relearn it. That's always something that's frustrating and can cause us to see pushback. And then the final point I wanted to make is that process improvement and automation really is a continual job. So it's something that involves revisiting the things that you institute, thinking about how they work, asking for feedback, going through new ideas and opportunities, maybe once a quarter, maybe once a year, whatever feels right for you. But it is something to continually work on, to continue getting better and better at. All right, let's do a quick summary here of the things that we talked about today. So the first thing that we talked about was what automation is and what it isn't. We talked about why automation is important and got some ground rule, or got on the same foundation about some of the benefits that we can expect to see. We talked about how to plan your automation strategy. We talked about some of those tools that Clio has. And then finally, I wrapped up with some of those implementation tips of what you can expect your automation process to need in order to be successful bringing it to your firm. So I want to call out two main resources here. One, the Clio support team. The Clio support team is amazing, and they're available 5 days a week, 24 hours a day. If you have questions further on the things that we talked about today, or you want to get into some more nuances of things that are specific to your firm. So I'd encourage you, please reach out to them if you have further questions, and they'd be happy to assist. And the second is that in the conference app, we've put a link to a page that has more information on all the tools that we talked about today. So if you found something that was interesting, but you didn't hear enough, or you need to dig in a little bit more on, please go check that out in the conference app, and you'll get links to all of that information. And then this talk is recorded, so please feel free to go back to this if we went a little too fast or you didn't have a chance to see the details that you wanted to. But there are also a bunch of other seminars that occurred yesterday and today that were recorded as well and are related to the topics of automation. So as you're rewatching this presentation, take a look at some of these sessions as well. Pause that video and see if any of those videos are ones that you want to watch also, that maybe go into some more depth around these topics or things that others in your firm might be interested in as well. All right, so with that, I just want to say on behalf of Ana and I, thank you very much for your attention today. So we'll open it up to some questions now if people have questions, but we'll also be hanging around afterwards, so if you want to come up and talk to us for a little bit, we'll be happy to do so here or in the hallway or wherever. Yeah, first question right there.
Using ScanSnap to upload documents directly to the Documents tab in Clio is a great feature, but is there a way to create subfolders to organize those documents, or is it just going to just be one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other?
Yeah, I think I can handle that question. So the question was, ScanSnap is great for doing bulk uploads of documents, physical documents into Clio, but is there a way to be able to subfolder them to do organization? And with ScanSnap, when you're uploading documents, you have the ability to choose which folders and which matters to associate them with. Which matters to associate them with within Clio. So if you know the places that you want those, I believe that within the ScanSnap, and we actually just launched a refresh of ScanSnap, the integration with Clio, that you can choose the exact folder that you'd like to see the documents go into. So if you've created those subfolders beforehand, I believe you can now, but I'm going to double check with my colleagues, and if that's not the case, I'll add a clarification somewhere to those notes. And feel free to swing by the Clio Labs as well, where our product teams who actually worked on those new features can give a little bit more depth as to the ScanSnap features. Thanks for that question.
I do believe ScanSnap is actually here as an integration partner. So if you go into the room right next door, they're actually in there if you want to dive into some more details.
Yeah. Where's the closest microphone? There it is.
I think right next to him.
Under the outstandings balance tab, is that list also going to include people who are on payment plans who haven't yet fulfilled their entire payment plan?
That's
So
great.
if you tried to do like a bulk send out messages, are they going to get included in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say my educated guess on that is I don't believe that people who have outstanding payment plans are included in the outstanding balance. But again, I'd encourage you to come chat. Unfortunately, there's a lot of intricacies to to the product, and our billing folk are here and are happy to give you the exact nuances of that. Yeah.
Ryland's coming around.
On the text snippets you're talking about, if I put those in, like if I put in an abbreviation, that shows up, and if I put those in anywhere in Clio, that'll come up.
Almost every corner of Clio. So is there a particular place you're hoping
Like
to use it?
calendars, tasks, billing.
Yes, yeah. So it would work in all of those. I think ones that come to mind it wouldn't work in would be something like a document because it's not native to Clio. But yes, like calendars.
Yeah, it's
Time
just
entries,
anything. I just wanted to be anything in Clio. I get it, not the documents, because that's
Yeah.
something different. Yeah, I'll pass.
I just want to know if you are going to be uploading and using the document management system, and let's say you have folders, subfolders that exist currently in SharePoint. Is that an easy transition if you wanted to stop using SharePoint and use Clio document management system?
Yeah, so our engineering teams recently built some features to help make the process of document migration easier from third-party services. There are a few tools available to do so, and if you have the time to swing by and talk to our support teams over in the Smart Bar, they can go over the exact details of those, but we do commonly help people migrate their data over from a third-party service into Clio these days.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes, how do you get the Clio launcher launched?
So the question was, how do you get the Clio launcher launched? So if you have, I believe it's the Boutique and Elite subscriptions, then you'll see that little gray icon next to your documents. And on clicking on that for the first time, it will give you the instructions of how to download it and set it up. And then once that happens, you'll then see that turn blue, at which point it's active and those documents will actually load. So we have a whole bunch of support articles as well in the Clio support area. I think it's support.clio.com that gives the instructions of how to do so. But if you just want to go and click the little gray icon next to the document right now, that should give you the instructions as well. Awesome. Right in the back there, yeah?
Yeah, we've asked on a number of occasions about being able to pull links to documents in calendars or communications or notes so that you can go right to the document. Do you expect that to happen anytime soon?
I'm not sure. Well, did you have feedback on that, Anna?
Yeah, sorry, can you just repeat the first half of your question?
So we'd like to be able to link a particular document within a note or a calendar item or a communication,
Yeah.
so we don't have to leave and go to documents and hunt for the relevant document.
Yeah, so I know that feedback has been expressed to Clio before, and I know that our product managers working on our documents and our calendaring features have and are thinking about it, but I'd encourage you, if you have the time, apologies for saying this over and over again, but our actual product managers who work on those areas are over here today in our Clio labs, and if you wanted to express that feedback and hear more detailed plans about it, I'd encourage you to head that way. Yeah, sorry for not having a more specific answer for you.
We have a question right here, Ryland. That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. So the question was, are there any applications to help convert existing Word docs into a format that you can use within Clio?
So I have merged docs that I want to have Clio fields
Mm-hmm.
to become my new Clio template.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So the answer from the audience was that we think we have to do it manually as part of the setup in that, and then I guess once you're doing that moving forward, it might be a little bit easier. I do think from the engineering or technical side of things, if you know someone who's more technically savvy, it's not a feature within Clio or not an app that I know about, but the ability to find and replace text within documents is something that I know some apps out there do, or an engineer could potentially program. So I'll make sure I pass that feedback along to our engineers here, in addition to saying that if you're looking for find and replace type applications, you can get the format of what it looks like in Clio and then try and do the find and replace to make that a little bit easier.
So there's task lists, but then in the other part of Clio, there's another feature that's similar that I forget the name of.
Is it Clio Grow?
Workflow.
For Clio Grow?
Yes.
Yes.
Could you say a little bit about those two things, the difference and why they're separate?
Yeah, absolutely. So Clio Grow is more or less kind of like the pre-managed workflow. So that's when you're working to get a prospective client as a paying client. So you set up workflows as in, you want to get the client in for a face-to-face meeting. You want them to fill out an intake form. Maybe you want them to sign an engagement letter online. Tasks lives within Clio Manage. So that's kind of your day-to-day activities. That's, what you're doing when you're doing your casework. So task might be something specific to, like a document within the casework that you would do. Does that sort of answer your question?
If we were to try and read between the lines, is it that you like the features in one or the other and you'd like to see them harmonized because both workflow and tasks you feel should be applicable across both? Yeah, here's some clapping in the back there. I totally understand that pain, and I'll make sure that when I go back to my engineering teams that I pass along that feedback. Thank you for suggesting. If there aren't any other questions, I'll just give it another couple moments here, but Anna and I will be hanging around the front here, so feel free to come up and talk to us. And again, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for coming, everyone.